Here are the rules for the 2-period RSI strategy. We're going to go long when the closing price is above that 200 bar simple moving average. A lot of people call this a bull market, right? This is a regime filter. We're also going to go long when the 2-period RSI falls below 20. So we're in a bull market. We're looking for a pullback as defined by the RSI, and we are going to go long. We're going to close that trade when that 2-period RSI rises above 70. All right, please notice this doesn't have any stops. We're just coding this up as is in Larry's book. Now, I coded this up in Build Alpha, and this is what the equity curve looks like. The green portion on the far left side, that is the in sample, and the out of sample is the solid blue line. But what's, of course, even more important is this has been chugging along, making new equity highs for the past 18 years. Pretty incredible. This really is a great strategy, or at least the start of a great strategy. But let's go to Build Alpha. Let me show you exactly how I built this. Here we are in the Build Alpha user interface. You can see the main component here is this huge collection of different indicators. So what we're going to do is build out our trading system without writing one single line of code. Over off to the left-hand side, I went ahead and selected ES. I'm going to go over to additional settings, and I'm going to set the slippage and commissions. And really, that's all I'm going to change on this page here. I'm going back to the main menu, and we're going to build out our strategy. The first thing we want to do is to build out that long-term filter. Remember, that was the closing price must be larger or greater than the 200 bar simple moving average. So I'm going to bring up the simple moving average filters, and here they all are. So we just simply have to look for the one we're interested in. Here it is down here at the bottom. The closing price is greater than the 200 bar simple moving average. Now you can see there are three columns here: entry, required, and exit. We're going to say this is an entry signal and it's going to be required. So having it required means Build Alpha has to include this in the strategy. If we left it unchecked, that means it would be optional. In this case, Build Alpha would test it with that filter and without that filter. But the rules require that in there. Now we're also going to look for the RSI. Here we go, 2-period RSI less than 20. We want that as an entry signal, and we want it required. All right, so we have our two entry signals, the moving average filter as well as the 2-period RSI. Now we need to do the exit signal. The exit signal is a 2-period RSI above 70. And here it is right here. And we're going to go over to this third column. That tells it that this is an exit. I'm going to select it, and we can see our rules here that we have currently selected. So the close greater than the simple moving average of 200 bars, we can see that's an entry and required. Likewise, down here, we can see a 2-period RSI less than or equal to 20. That is an entry and required. And then 2-period RSI greater than 70 is our exit. Over here, we can see we have our two rules are required. We have a total of 3 entry and 1 exit. Now, this might be a little bit confusing. How come we have 3 entry rules? Well, that's because Build Alpha has a default entry rule, which is kind of a safety feature that's always running in the background, and that is the closing price of the current bar can't be 0. This is just something technical to help ensure that the code is going to run correctly. We don't have to worry about that. All right, so we have configured it. Build Alpha is now configured to backtest the Larry Connors 2-period RSI strategy. Now, before we do that, we want to go select our start date. We're going to go to 2000. We're going to go to the end of 2025. And out of sample data, I have it currently at 40%. And as other filters here, I just want a minimum of 5 trades. This really isn't going to come into any play here. And we have the option to do profit targets, stop losses, and other different holding periods. But we're just going to ignore that for now. Remember, we're going to build out the basic strategy as seen in Larry Connors, which didn't have a stop. It was just simply these 3 rules. All right, so we have built our system. We have told it the back test we want to go over, which years. Now we just simply press regular simulation and it will build out our strategy. And then there it goes. You can see that it's very fast and has developed two systems. Why two? Why don't we just have one? Well, remember I said there's that little sanity check here that the software uses, that the close is not zero. It's actually going to build the system with that sanity check and without it. We don't need to really worry about this. It doesn't impact us, but it's a little quirk of build alpha. So here is our strategy, and we can, each one of these lines, of course, and there's two here, is a performance report on a given strategy. So here is our back-tested results. We can see the name of the strategy is actually the input, and let me bring that back up there. And the exit parameters are listed here. We can see that the exit on a single close with a 2-period RSI is greater than 70. We have a little bit of an equity curve there to kind of give us an eyeball result. We got our net profit, our drawdown, and all types of statistics running over here. We can quickly bring up an equity curve by clicking this button here. We could see the green here is the in sample and then our out of sample. If we right click on this, we get some more information. We can show, for example, the last 15 trades. We can see them here. We have a winner, 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 winner. Here's a loser, winner, and so forth. We can also come in here and, if you wanted to, show all the trades in a table. We could show the chart with all of our trades, and there's a lot. And of course, we could zoom in here and see all of our individual trades. And of course, there's many other features here. But I don't want to turn this into a big tutorial. I just wanted to show you how quickly it is we can build out our system, all without writing a single line of code. All right, so let's take a look at the results here. The P&L was 134K. We had a drawdown of about 18K. That gives us a net profit versus drawdown of 7.5. I like to look at this, and I like to see a minimum of 2, and we're well above that. We have about 300 trades, which is a decent amount, and 75% are profitable, which is really pretty astounding, but it is a shorter term strategy. And the average profit per trade is $451. Now, the compounded annual growth rate is 3.34. Now, a lot of people will look at this and like, oh my God, Jeff, you can put that in just about anything and do a little bit better. Remember, we're trading just one contract, and I'm assuming a $100,000 account. What we don't have in here is stops and proper position sizing. We can really expand or grow that compounded annual growth rate by not taking any more risk, but adjusting the proper size based upon the stop. But we're not going to get into that. We just want to keep the CAGR there just for future reference, comparing against other systems. But don't let that low number put you off. All right, this is something I like to do when I run across any idea. So this title of the slide is Strip Concepts Down to Their Key Idea. So when I discover an idea, like what we just discovered in Larry Conner's book, I like to strip it down to its key idea. In this case, we can see we can go long when the closing price is above that 200-bar simple moving average. Well, let's remove that. The idea here is, well, that's what Larry Conner's picked. Maybe there's something better. And with the power of Build Alpha, we could data mine a filter replacement for our 200-bar moving average. So what I'm doing is stripping out the filters and then going back to Build Alpha to see if we can replace them with something that does better. Let's go do that now. What we want to do in Build Alpha is now data mine a different filter other than our 200-bar simple moving average. What I'm going to do is go ahead and uncheck this required field. So we're telling Build Alpha, please don't necessarily include this in our strategy. Now, what we want to do instead is data mine other filters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to our legacy indicators, because we have plenty of indicators here. Look at all of these. Let me close this up. You can see we have all types of filters here. classical indicators and some ones here which aren't so familiar as well. And what I'm going to do is come over here to the lower right, and I'm going to go to our entry selection, and you can see we can select a random 1,000 different rules. But what I'm going to do is just go ahead and select all of them. And you can see up here, now we have, I should go down here to the total, 3,975. So 3,975 different indicators are selected. So if we just go randomly, this is a week number, so it's going to be looking at different weeks. And we can see it all has the entry selected, but none of them are required. So what we're telling Build Alpha to do is consider these for our strategy. Likewise, if we go down to pivot points, please consider these. Let's go down to high, low, close. Let's consider these. So we're telling Build Alpha, go ahead and consider these thousands of different indicators as potential filters for our strategy. Now, we have to change one more thing. I'm going to go over to additional settings, and what I'm going to do is go to max rules per strategy, and I'm going to set this to 2. Why? Well, we have our one rule, right? Our 2-period RSI must be below 20. It must be at 20 or lower, I should say. And then we removed our simple moving average. So we have one entry rule. By telling Build Alpha we only want 2, and we are mandatory including that 2-period RSI, that's going to leave Build Alpha with it's only going to have the ability to pick one filter. So that's why we selected 2. It's going to select the best ones that it finds out of all of these. So that is all. I'm just going to do the simulation again. And what Build Alpha will start doing is testing all of those different indicators. And we can see how fast it was. So now what we're looking at is a collection of potential strategies. I'm going to expand this exit parameter here so we can see that they're all the same, right? So they're all exiting at what they should be. That 2-period RSI is a greater than 70 or equal to. And likewise, I'm going to expand out the entry rule, and we can see what's going on. We can see the very top one here. We have our familiar 2-period RSI is less than 20, and we can see all of these include that, like it should. But it's also then data mined an additional filter. And we can see this one here at the very top is a day of the week filter. The second one it picked was this value close. And then we have another day of the week, value close, value close. Here's one that's a little different, a Hearst. Now what we can do is organize these maybe by net profit, such as this. So the top ones bubble up here. You could organize it by net profit versus drawdown by selecting that, or any other of these as well. Likewise, we could select one here, take a look at the equity curve, and we can see, wow, that really does look very sharp. That looks great. And of course, we could do all the other things, including taking a look at the last few trades. Just to keep this simple, I organize these by net profit, and I'm just going to select the top one. And we can see the top one is a value open is greater than a value open, and they both have a period of 5 with an offset of 3 and 4. I'm just going to select this one as our best filter. And then let's record these important metrics. All right, so we added our new filter. Let's compare these. We could see a dramatic improvement in the P&L. We have the baseline off on the left-hand side, and on the far right column, our new entry filter. And it's generating $261,000. Pretty incredible. Drawdown actually improved, which is phenomenal. I didn't expect that. Net profit versus drawdown is really an astronomical number in my book. Trades, we're generating more trades at 366. The percent profitable has fallen. Our average profit per trade has increased. So this is really a great combination. The drawdown has fallen, and the average profit per trade has increased. Really incredible. And then the compounded annual growth rate is at about 5% versus 3.3. The new rule is using the value close indicator, and we're taking a 5 period on those, and it's really kind of different. we're looking 3 bars back is going to be less than the one from 4 bars back. So again, we're looking for weakness in the market, and we're watching, of course, that 2-period RSI falling below 20, and then we're going to exit when the RSI rises above 70. But we don't have to stop there. All right, we've data mined a new filter for entering the trade. What about closing that trade? Let's cross that off the list here, and let's go to Build Alpha and see if we can have it data mine a filter, or an exit, I should say, that does better. All right, we're back in Build Alpha and want to data mine another exit signal. It's going to be very similar to what we did before, but what I want to first do is tell Build Alpha is to use that value close entry filter all the time. So right here, we can see that is our new filter, right? That was what we picked. So I want to make sure that Build Alpha always has that. So we're telling Build Alpha, always include this as our entry signal. I want to lock that down because I just want to data mine an exit with this filter always being used as our entry. Hopefully that makes sense. Now what we can do is, now that we told Build Alpha to always include that value close, what we want to do now is go ahead and select over here all of our different exit selections. So we're going to select all of these indicators and we're going to consider them for exits. I'm going to go to additional settings, and I want to make sure, I want to go here and check that our exit signal mode is set to single. This is going to tell Build Alpha only consider one rule for an exit. Not 2, not 3. We only want to have a single exit per strategy. Now we can see over in the lower right, 3,974 different exits are going to be looked at, as well as 397 entries. But with the entries, we told Build Alpha to include our value close indicator as the primary filter, right? That is our primary filter for our strategy. We forced it in there. And because we told Build Alpha we can only have 2 entry signals, we already have defined those 2 entry signals. Therefore, it's not going to data mine new entries. So hopefully that is clear. We can just go ahead and press regular simulation, and Build Alpha will do its magic. Here are the results. I went ahead and just organized these by net profit versus drawdown, just to kind of mix it up a little bit. And we can see what kind of bubbled up here to the top is an exit that is the simple moving average. 50-period simple moving average is less than the 200-bar moving average, which is kind of interesting. Let's take a look at that equity curve. So pretty dramatic looking equity curve. We have these big pop-ups, right? Like this one here and this one here. This exit here is rather interesting. Let's take a look at the last 15 trades here. And yeah, so you can see here that it holds for a very short amount of time for some of these, right? But some of these, like down here, look how long it held. Days and days and days. And this one, days and days. Really interesting. So if you think about this, look at the exit parameter. If the simple moving average, the 50-period simple moving average, is less than the 200-bar moving average, that's when you want to get out. If we are in a bear market and the 50-period is below the 200-bar moving average, that can happen. That means this is going to exit on one day. So think about that. In a bear market, we're only going to hold for one day. But on those instances where the market is in a bull phase, it's possible for this system to hold for many days, maybe even weeks or months. So it's kind of interesting how this one little rule can really change the dynamic of this trading system. Yeah, we can really see it on this chart. Look at all these little trades down here, and then boom, we'll catch a big one. Then it'll have a few small trades, some smaller trades, and then another big run. So this is designed to catch bigger runs. Now, maybe that's something you want or you don't want. I'm not sure. But you know what? For fun, I'm going to just select this one, and let's record the results in our table. All right, here is the new rules. I wanted to bring it up. So we have the entry rules we looked at previously, and then we have our new exit rule, which is the 50-period simple moving average has to be less than the 200-bar moving average. And we saw what that did to the strategy. It kind of turned it into this dynamic system that would get out on 1 bar if we're in this kind of bearish phase. But when the 50-period moving average is above that 200-bar moving average, all of a sudden, this system wants to turn into a longer-term holding system, which is really cool. Let's compare the values here. So the P&L, we're getting about the same, slight improvement. Drawdown, I'm comparing this largely to the new entry filter. Did it improve it? Drawdown did get better. Net profit got better, a tiny amount, really not much at all. Net profit versus drawdown, slightly improved. We've cut back on some trades, which I kind of like. I do kind of like it when I can trade fewer times but make just as much money. Percent profitable, that's falling, which kind of makes sense. Remember, how this is kind of behaving now is more of a longer term strategy. And so whenever you have a longer term strategy, you have to let things play out, and often you have to endure more failing trades. Now, maybe you don't like that. And in this case, well, you could use Build Alpha to build out different filters, or different exits, I should say. Average profit per trade climbed to 1,000. Wow, almost 1,100. Really incredible. Finally, the compounded annual growth rate went up a tiny amount. Overall, real interesting. I hope the concept of the key idea made sense, and we could actually approach this in a different way. So if we strip down, going back to the key idea, or going back to Connor's original idea, what we can do is, let's take a look at go long when. Well, the 2-period RSI we always want to have there. So when the 2-period RSI falls below 20, we're going to go long. But let's actually search for a new filter, and at the same time, let's look for an exit. So close trade when, we're going to search for one exit. And then also, we're going to add a stop loss, right? Who's going to trade without a stop loss? So with Build Alpha, what we can do is strip the key idea, or I should say, strip down Larry Connor's 2-period RSI system that we started with. We're going to remove that long filter. We're going to remove that exit filter. And we're going to also then data mine a stop loss. So we're going to search for a long filter, we're going to search for an exit signal, and then we're going to also search for an ATR stop. And with Build Alpha, we can do these all at the same time, and it'll do it very quickly. Let's go to Build Alpha and see what we can make. All right, we are back. We're going to actually have it build our system with an entry filter and an exit filter with a stop loss at the same time. So we're going to have it data mine those 3 different things. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is scroll down and remove our mandatory filter, right, which was our value open. We just want it to start searching our entry filters all over again. So we already have everything selected here. We have our entry filters selected, 3,000 of them, 3,900 I should say, and 3,900 exit filters. I want to come over here, then configure our stop loss. I'm going to select a stop loss. We can do ATR or fixed or percentage. I'm going to keep it just ATR. Open this up, and we're going to do 2 to, let's go to 6 in steps of 1. And so it's going to check out those different ATR-based stops. For additional settings, I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to do continuous simulation. It's just a little faster. We're doing a lot more different indicators right now, and just as demo, I want to do a continuous simulation, which is different than the regular simulation. It's just that it's a little quicker for demo purposes. Now, the entry rules, we want to have a max count of 2. And for our exit, we want to have that set to a max count of 1. So that is set correctly. So we can go back to our main panel here, and I am just going to click Continuous Simulation. Build Alpha then is going to start data mining different entry and exit filters. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and stop our continuous simulation, and I'm going to organize these. I think it already is. Yeah, net profit versus drawdown. And let's take a look here. I was kind of earlier looking at this one. It's real simple. The second one down here from the top. We can see it has 378 trades. It's making $338,000. The equity curve, let's highlight it. Let's take a look at the equity curve. Looks like this, and you can see it has these jagged quick rises because guess what? We can see that what it picked for our exit signal is the closing price is less than the 200 bar moving average. So that's kind of just the original regime filter, remember? But now Build Alpha says, hey, as an exit filter, that works really amazing if you're targeting net profit. And so we can see the entry filter, it's day of the week 1, 2, or 3. And then our familiar 2-period RSI less than or equal to 20. So the rule here is we can buy Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday when that RSI falls below 20. But if it's Thursday or Friday, we are not taking the trade. And then once we're in a trade, we have a 2 ATR stop. And then we're going to exit if the close is less than or equal to the EMA. And I just noticed that it's not the SMA, it's an EMA. So it's the exponential moving average. So again, when we're in a more bear market, it's only going to hold for 1 bar. But if we are above that 200 bar EMA, we are going to be holding for a longer period. And if we go ahead and show this on a chart, we can see those familiar patterns where they'll have several trades here as it's falling, trying to buy that pullback. And then on these big pullbacks and long bulls, we can see we are catching a lot of that. So that's where most of the profit is being made. So let's go back to our slides and record that. All right, here are the new rules we came up with. Of course, the 2-period RSI must be below 20. We always include that. That's really our key idea. But we data mined that Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday appear to be very strong days of the week we take this. If it's Thursday or Friday, we don't open a new trade. And then for closing the trade, we're going to close when the close is below the 200 bar exponential moving average. And our stop loss is quite simply a 2-period ATR. You could see how quickly we're able to build and test this with Build Alpha. Now here are the final results. We're going to compare our baseline system, which is what Larry Connors published over 18 years ago. And today we used the power of Build Alpha to data mine a new entry signal, a new exit signal, as well as a stop loss. And it gave us this interesting strategy that's generating over $338,000 in profit. And we saw it does this with a very small drawdown. So our net profit versus drawdown is an incredible 31.6 with a drawdown of $10,000. Those are really quite incredible numbers. And of course, it did this in a very unique way, as we saw that it actually changes from a short term where many of the trades are held for 1 day. But in those strong bull markets, this strategy is going to try to hold for the long term. And that's why we're getting so much profit. We can also see that it's doing it with a fair number of trades, 378. The percent profitable has fallen from 75 to 57. And this makes complete sense when you consider that the baseline was a very simple, or I should say a very short-term system, right? It's only going to hold for several days most of the time. But our new strategy has that long-term component. When price is trending above that 200 bar exponential moving average, in other words, in a strong bull market, we're going to hold for many weeks at a time. And when you have longer term systems like this, you tend to run into more stop losses. The average profit per trade is gone up significantly to just under $900 per trade. The compounded annual growth rate has grown from about 3.3 to 5.8. Again, obviously I didn't show you everything in Build Alpha. I really wanted to highlight how I take a simple idea that I find in a book, break it down into what I call a key idea, and then data mine different entry rules and different exit rules and different stops. We only really tested one type of stop, but there's nothing preventing you from looking at others as well. But you can see how we can build and test many different systems very quickly without learning how to code. Really incredible tool. If you're at all interested in learning more about this, go ahead and check the links below this video where I'll have more information. All right, that's it for this time. We'll see you soon.